So this exits next to Purple Cow.
They could also come down to Lisa and enter from that direction as well.
Or Century Departmental, but
Right. Yeah, more than likely they'll go down Laura Lane and enter on that direction.
But your public market is up front though.
The public market is here, yep, and there's parking that wraps around it because we believe that this will be mostly where the people who shop at the market, and it will also have access there for deliveries, garbage, and all the necessary things that go around a market.
So if they're using the public market, then they simply would use Lisa Lane.
Correct. Possibly. You never know.
Yeah.
You know.
Of course not. Yeah.
Especially since we anticipate this being park space, we would see it as park space that's open to the public. And we're actually willing, one of the things we did at Tresta is we have docks and we actually provide, and the boardwalk, and we have a public easement with Monona so that the public's always available to go on the boardwalk and the public is always available to go on the boat docks. And half of the boat docks are set aside for public access into the site. So that's also something we're totally open to on the site to make sure that it remains a public amenity for Middleton, not just a resident amenity.
and I've been to Tresta, and it's a very nice development. And
Thank you.
The staff there say you're good to work with. So, the only other question is the skating in the park you talk about. That would there be a charge for that? Is this?
Our envision for skating is no charge. Maybe rental skates, although those are a pain. But no, we envision. So I spent November in Vienna, Prague, and London, and visited a number of Christmas markets. And we've also spent a lot of time in the Chicago Christmas market over the years. And in fact, this square footage is the same size as the Chicago market in Daly Plaza. They have. They not only have center skating that's open and you can use it whenever you want, which is how we envision it. They also have kind of skate paths, which are great, and I'd love to do that. I'm just not sure about the execution of that portion. But yeah, I am a skating family. You know, we host a Madison Capitals hockey player as a billet, and my son skates. So having more ice in Middleton, he's a wing, so is always good.
So you compare it with Chicago. We are much smaller, so you think that you compare the...
Oh yeah, you know, it's interesting. You know, it used to be that Vienna had the markets for Christmas markets and nobody else has them. Now Vienna has 20 in their city. Okay. And every periphery town in Germany, they've just grown exponentially. And so there really is this, Chicago's you can't even get in the door, and they've added on 2 additional markets out in the suburbs.
I remember seeing that on TV. Kurt, you are done?
Yes.
Okay, Cindy, go ahead.
I'm interested in reaction from the staff and whoever about the idea of putting a public market there, which is really pretty close to our downtown area in a town center that we might be thinking about and that sort of thing. And I'm wondering about whether you see any conflicts in having this so close to that. I mean, I almost think I would feel better if it was a longer distance away because it wouldn't be competing for the same users, and I'm wondering if you guys feel that that's something that might happen here.
Well, we haven't. Are you talking about with the downtown plaza that's proposed?
Yeah. And also the construction that we've already approved to go all over downtown, where we expect food and pedestrians and shopping and so forth, and this is so close to that.
Right. I think our bigger concern from a location standpoint was whether the market could be successful. And, is Middleton big enough to support a market? We know that there are a lot of public markets that don't turn a profit year after year. We know that Madison's been working on trying to get a public market in their city for years and years. So I think that our biggest concern was, can it be successful in this type of redeveloping location? There are a lot of jobs nearby, but there still are not a lot of rooftops nearby to support a public market. If it's not successful, we might want to talk about what the other potential uses could be for the building. If 10 years down the road it's constructed and we find that it's not successful, what would the Plan Development District documents say for the other potential uses for the site? Robin and Teresa has been really good to work with, and I think that they've taken a lot of the staff's feedback into consideration with their current proposal. And there's a lot to like about it because it's mixed use. She's got a lot of really innovative features in the proposal: sustainable development, local food. Those are all things that we support, but there were 4 things that were kind of lingering concerns from our staff. The one being, would a public market be successful in this location? There's not a whole lot of density still in this area. Another is that the medical office site, was shrunk up slightly from what was originally envisioned in the Parmenter plan. The north-south road that Kurt just talked about, we want to make sure that this is being designed with the understanding that this is part of a larger development area, and really the impetus for establishing TIF 5. So we want to make sure that this plan fits within the vision for the area. And also, we were concerned about the layout of the large buildings around a central common space, which, I've never been to a Christmas market. Mark has talked a lot about and showed us a lot of pictures of Christmas markets overseas and showed how they're designed. What we've seen is that typically in Middleton, when you see large apartment buildings like that around a central green space, that's a concept that was popular with apartments in the 60s and 70s. I know that's not what you're proposing, right, but we're wondering, is that going to hold its value over time, or would having more connectivity and having buildings fronting on the street, would that be a better long-term concept? I think we counted up the number of acres there that right now is what we're considering the super block, and it's about 20 acres of land that is not tied into the grid at all. So that's that was another concern from our staff.
Yes,
I guess what's wrong with the 20 acres? 20-acre block. What's driving this north-south need?
I just think from a planning standpoint, it's better for vehicular access, it's better for pedestrian access, it's better for bicycle access when you have more connectivity in the grid.
The city of Portland, for example, in Oregon, which I happened to visit a few weeks ago, their block size is about 1 acre, a little over an acre. They're one of the most tightly gridded cities. Yeah. So that doesn't mean we have to be like that, but I'm just saying that a block for a downtown type setting that's very pedestrian friendly is usually on the much smaller end instead of 20 acres.
Right.
As density increases in an area,
right,
the block size typically decreases. Yeah. And right now, there's not. This is still low density development, but the future vision for the area is for a higher level of density.
And the difficulty is you are deconverting, in essence, commercial and industrial sized blocks, for which a 20-acre block is not unreasonable in kind of an office park or industrial park setting. But as you add housing and mixed use, there's an incentive to want to keep the design is that you're kind of one of the first in this corridor. Right. Everything around you is this kind of more heavily commercial, yep, industrial sort of scale buildings. So for you to design on a residential grid before the other stuff, while the other stuff is still there, is not the most aesthetically for you to be able to rent the apartment.
Right.
Right. So if we knew what the future development would look like, this doesn't necessarily hug the street and have good urban design that would fit with what's around it. The problem is what's around it now is what we're designing for, and what's around it now is something you'd almost want to screen out.
Right.
To have everything
absolutely
in your courtyard.
Attractive
right,
things.
Right. And that's the
well, look at Tribeca versus the car dealerships. Look at that juxtaposition.
Right.
And we don't want a sea of asphalt and concrete. Our vision as a development company is the more green space and the more public access that we can provide, that's what we keep going back to. We can make it work with a road, although it won't connect. My understanding is this connector will not be, under the current ownership, even considered. And who they're possibly going to sell to doesn't need a rezone of that property to do what they want on that site for long term.
You're requesting to,
Who
Right.
is it that owns that site?
the Bruce Company.
Yeah, well, no, Lee Bruce individually with Gene Whitish. So they've rolled out Bruce Company kept the things that are closest to their site, and Lee with Gene own a number of the other parcels around there.
And to respond to the pedestrian trying to break that up from the super block, I totally understand that concept. And I think with the design that we have, with the bike paths going through there and the pedestrian paths, that's really what you're looking to break up from a super block, as far as I understand it. The vehicular traffic going an extra, 300, 400, 500 feet in distance down the road isn't such a big deal, but when you're trying to break that up from a pedestrian or a bicycle standpoint, that's really where you want to try to break that up and make it more user-friendly. We're trying to achieve that with the bike paths going through that center courtyard area. We're not blocking it off from a security standpoint. You'll be able to get in there with the fire trucks, you'll be able to get in there with the rescue squad, or if something were to happen. It's not like it's completely blocked off like super blocks are overseas and stuff like that. So we're trying to break it up the best we can, but we're also trying to maximize the amount of green space and make this a sustainable project.
But to be fair, what you're trying to break up is pedestrian and bike access on the site, not within the
Not through the site.
not the whole corridor itself,
Yeah.
which is staff's concern.
I guess, from my point of view, if that is a significant desire or need on the part of the city, that's how we should plan around it, and that we should have a through street.
Yeah.
Obviously we could do it through condemnation to get it to go all the way through, but we could also prepare the next step. We've got Jacob's property. We could, I think, use this property if this whole complex were to move to the west. And I think that it would all fit within that.
What do you mean move? Over the medical?
They don't own.
We don't own the middle spot.
You don't own
This one,
This one, and he's not wanting to sell.
Well, he's getting close to retirement.
His son's in the business now, actually. So, and we were very respectful of not developing this portion because of the medical campus on the other side. The original vision here of the street under Vanderwall's plan was because this was going to be double-loaded office buildings.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly the same use that we're looking at as well.
No, I understand that, but, what's coming first? Is it city needs, or is it something that just kind of developed helter-skelter over the years? And what are we going to continue to move helter-skelter because we're afraid of taking on this obstacle? And to me, that's a big concern. I mean, I don't like this either. I mean, my favorite city is New York City, where I can walk a block in half a minute, in 20 minutes, or well, not even that, 5 minutes. This is all ridiculous in terms of pedestrian and everything else. And I don't think I would feel comfortable taking these bike paths through your property. I wouldn't consider that. I don't. To me, that's private property. And it looks like private property. You can put all the signs up that you want, but it looks like private property.
That concerns me because it's never intended, that space is not intended to look like that. So we would definitely want to make site adjustments that makes sure that the public felt like that was meant to be used.
Yeah.
It's like a city plaza and a city park within an infill development is what we envision it. Like the park inset in Chicago on the lower lakefront.
Yeah. Well, on the other side, when I think of Millennial Park in Chicago and so forth, I don't know too many of these other places that you mentioned, but it's on a major thoroughfare. I can see it. This, I don't think, I don't see. It doesn't look to me like an amenity for the public.
You mean the plaza?
The pond.
The pond.
Yeah, you know.
But you have a road going around it, right? Or
We do, yeah, we have a road
access?
that goes, it's just not right here. It's
Yeah.
to the right of it.
And then you got the paths, at least from what I see, going through the middle as well. So I don't know, these are the bike paths or what is? Or
But
is
who
it-
would take that path if it said private street?
Well, we don't have to designate, and I'm happy if we had to make this a public road for access. I'm just trying to save everybody a little bit of money. You know, if we have to plow it and we have to maintain it as opposed to the city having to maintain it. I'm not planning on putting up private property signs or no cut through signs. We want people through the facility. That's what makes it a vibrant area that people go to.
That street and then not mark it as private.
We don't have to, because we're fine if people drive through. And we're also fine with giving a public easement to the street.
The person you
And the-
sell it to next might not feel that
Well,
way.
Well, but
those
I'm
sort
on
of
a
easements
long-term
would be
home,
recorded
right.
in the developer's agreement.
But that
I mean,
has,
since you're requesting TIF, that's all part of the negotiation in the developer's agreement. Various easements and
Yeah, well, they all
If
keep
you-
coming back.
If you put a street in the middle,
try not-
then, her concept of having a pond and a skating and all those things, that's gone. So it looks sort of special if we think that people are going to be doing the skating and all during winter.
Look at this. It looks
So that's also for holding the stormwater, I think, is that pond for the stormwater?
yeah, it would be stormwater as well, and which still needs to reside on the site, whether there's the road there or not.
You know, this whole area is going to change from the uses it
Yeah.
has had in the past to the uses we envision and intend for the future. And you got to start somewhere. It would be nice if the whole area was blank and you could plan it and implement it the way you wanted to. So it seems to me the question is this a good place to start? And what do we have to have in place as we start whatever's going to come next? I mean, it would be nice if you could buy that engineering company, but if you can't, you can't. And I mean, it would be, I suppose we could condemn space for that road, but, that's not something you do lightly. So you have to kind of work your way into where you want to be from where you are and make the decisions you think are the best at the time. My biggest concern about this is the one I expressed before, about the public market in downtown, the positions of those together.
We're actually hoping that they're very complementary to each other and that they feed to each other, and that it becomes a place where you go for multiple things. So, I can go here and get that, I can go to the market and get this, and there's a lot of opportunity there for Middleton people.
And this also looks like it's a different nature than the
Yes,
downtown
yeah.
plaza, what you have. The way I see is you have a very ambitious project here. So I'm just wondering that, all your vision, what would it take to really make it happen? So
Well,
this is,
My next question, which
Yeah.
will be the TIF request, is a piece of it. But we have a strong construction and architectural partner. Our construction partner is actually coming on as one of the partners in the project. That's Cardinal Capital Management Group out of Milwaukee, also known as A-Star Management here in Madison. I've actually one of my oldest clients, and now I'm hiring them. And we're already in process with a HUD loan. In fact, got our market study back this last week to tell how retail will do in this. Actually, retail was their number one use, and they thought the retail would do excellent here based on the usage around and what's been rented in Middleton. They've also talked about the absorption rate of the Madison area and Middleton in particular, and felt that this is we're well below where our absorption rate in Middleton and the Madison area should be. So this is hot off the presses 3 days ago, and I'm happy to share that market report with anyone who's interested in seeing it. Housing, yeah. So HUD doesn't allow us to go forward unless the market report is favorable. And so the market report is very favorable, and we're in to apply for their funding. So we with the TIF request and where we go with TIF and with our HUD financing and our equity, we'll be ready as soon as the loan closes. We don't have to raise any additional outside equity on this project.
See, the other thing is it's set up right now outside of the city. So if you had the Meritor had a definite plans, which I hope they do, and the other things are happening around there. I can see that the affordable housing you got happening there, but rest is still fluid. So to make that market successful, as Abby was saying too, probably will take a lot. So I don't know. So you feel that the market you will be able to publicize and make that market successful?
Yeah, in fact, I offered to bring people today because we have a lot of friends in Middleton from being skating in the club here, and everyone we've talked to has been just over the moon about having something close and accessible to them, and the trend is moving that way. But we have thought about what does it switch to if the market doesn't work, and we believe that yoga would go in there very easily, a restaurant would go in there very easily, a chiropractor would go in there very easily. There's a lot of fitness trainer that wants to have open spaces and doing body work, and CrossFit would work perfectly in that space. I don't do that, but it would work perfectly in that space. And so there's a lot of uses that we would do on top of it. But we've also reached out to the other food people in the city. We've met with DACCAP about their food market in Wisconsin and how food is trending, and they actually have a grant program for startup businesses. They actually encouraged us to apply to pay for our market manager the first year for this business. We've talked to the Farm Bureau, has a local foods initiative, very supportive of the project, and felt a number of their farm members would really be interested in being in a situation or a place like this. So we're passionate about the market. My partner and I have wanted to do a market in this area for a long time, and actually tried to do it in Monona at the River District, and it didn't work because we didn't meet the increment that they were looking for. We thought their increment was way too high for the site, and so we couldn't come to terms there. But actually more excited about Middleton, especially with the demographic here and the mix of people that you have that come into the city and work right around that market. I mean, you've got the high school down the street, and then within 2 miles you have a huge employment base that's right close to that market.
So how do you feel about the Fitzgerald had a very difficult time succeeding? I mean, that has been there for a long time.
And so
The Fitzgerald, that restaurant there, I mean, it's not a food market, but it's...
I would call it not
Fitzgerald.
great management. Yeah. We had friends that went in there to get barbecue the other day, and they waited 35 minutes to get water and a menu. So I don't think Fitzgerald's location is a bad location for a restaurant. I just think that they're not meeting the market need there with the new ownership.
Can I ask some more questions? It's interesting you say about Monona. Earlier tonight, I was at Monona CDA, and they were telling me you never should do a LIHTC deal because it doesn't generate enough increment. I said, we do them in Middleton, it generates enough increment. So
What kind of deal?
low-income housing tax
Low-income
credit.
housing.
Sorry.
Jacobs deals are LIHTC
Yeah.
deals.
So the other questions I have is, so if we're thinking of an urban design that's walkable for a future neighborhood concept that's mixed use, Jacobs property really fronts the street, and the parking you slip around in the back on Lisa Lane.
Shown here.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm a little concerned about the parking stalls in front of building C and D here, where the building is set back from the street, and you have rows of parking in the front.
We're up to moving that if need be. One of the things that we found, though, on retail, and what we found at Trista in particular,
Right there.
you don't probably do. Our our tenants are doing amazing, but every person you try to sell to thinks they need it right in front of their building. And so that's what we struggle with. I'm open to moving that, to be honest, because I don't love it, and moving it more to the front side. Or maybe we split the difference and we move them up away from the front of the market and leave it in front of the traditional retail. And so the market would open up towards both the street and to the courtyard.
Right, because in front of the retail, you have double-loaded parking, but in front of the market, you only have single-loaded parking there.
Assuming that people will wrap around the market as
Right.
well.
And then the other
And it's
question
just a
was,
site use.
these two parcels that you own that you've listed as future medical,
Yes.
what size are those parcels?
Oh, I don't know off the top of my head. Do you know off the top of your head?
Can
It
you?
really all depends on the final layout of the buildings, on what that.
Right, so
reserve space would be.
What are you anticipating for, you control those sites?
I do, yeah.
And do you have a concept as to how many gross square feet you're going to have of office or medical there and the building height?
I do not. I'll be honest. So for the short term, we would leave the building structure that's currently there and release it out, which is the Purple Plow Organic building.
So those two buildings are not part of your GDP application?
Right, because they're just in the parcel for access. The reason we bought that one is for access
Mark
to the
says each
site.
one's just over an acre.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Well, your total is 8.5 acres, and you are using 7.2, so that leaves 1.3 acres for the...
Yeah, so I may have I thought we were using 7, but we may be using slightly smaller
okay,
than that.
okay.
Yeah. Do you have? Oh, that's correct. We're taking part of what is Purple Cow's land, yeah, currently.
You're taking organic composting for parking. So
I'm trying to put it back in the middle. That's why I hate parking. If I didn't have to park a site, I never would. We would do less parking, but you have city requirements that require parking for us. So I feel like I need to meet them.
You're not requesting a reduced parking requirement.
We are not, no.
Because we're experts on shared parking now.
We love less parking, I tell you what, yeah. We are still, though, considering making it a zip car site and B-cycle site as well.
I got one other point I wanted to raise, and I don't know that, I think Cindy's the only other person here who might be old enough in terms of being the Middleton resident to a long-time Middleton resident to remember that back in the 70s and late 70s and early 80s, there was a great deal of concern about the fact that we had so many apartments. And
There was.
You know, we still do. We got a lot of apartments,
And-
50%.
and-
So
right now, in my, I did this a month or two ago, so I'm not sure of my exact numbers, but I think I'm pretty close by saying there are between 650 and 700 plus apartments about to come online.
Yep.
Now, this would make 1,000 apartments. And I think we just swung that pendulum right back where it was before, and that was the concern of the character of the city. That obviously we need apartments. We also wanted to have single-family homes so that it would be, it seems like a lot of what we're talking about is providing housing for people who are working for businesses that we have no guarantee will still be here. Businesses come and go, you know. We attracted these businesses from other communities around here, or some of them anyway. So we've got this right in that, in really, if you kind of just think a little globally about it, they're all in the same area. That whole 1,000 apartments are all in the same area. And I just raise that as I understand that people need affordable housing and so forth, but I'm not sure what the driver is, and I do think that it seriously changes the character of the city, and it's not a small city by any means anymore.
Kathy, you have a question?
I just, two comments. The park area, it puts me in mind of the Valencia Lost where there's a park in front of it, but nobody knows it's a park because it's so integrated with the building.
Oh.
And then the second thing with the Middleton Center, they're saying now they can't get retail to come to Middleton Center and they want to change it. Have you talked to people that are really interested in that much retail?
Yeah, we already have. We've had a conversation with a restaurant and a brewery for the site in the retail location. We've had a talk with a yoga studio for the retail location, and we've already had talks with people for the food hall. The difference in the food hall is the cost to rent are very different because you're going to have stalls from 300 square feet to 650 square feet. So your price, and they will come almost fully improved. So you can move in, and we're going with shorter term leases for people to be able to try things and do things and have some vibrant changing in there. And so we'll look at minimum of 3 to 6 months leases as opposed to a 5-year lease. It's a very different energy going in there. And our price point on our retail there is lower right now set than what they even want on Parliamentary. Now we may adjust that slightly, but I was very surprised that the retail has been a big demand, even a bigger demand than we've had at Waypoint. So,
Did I read you were doing shared office space too?
we've been investigating a co-working facility, correct. We haven't gotten very far with that, to be honest, but
They don't have anything like that around here, do they?
The Regis just opened in Greenway, across from Greenway Station. So there's one there, and there's one on the east side of Madison. I've been trying to do a co-working facility forever. I don't want to manage it though, so I'm trying to find someone who wants to do it in the spaces.
How many stories is the apartments?
The apartment buildings will be 4 stories, physical stories, but it'll appear to be a 5-story in some places because there'll be 2-story lofts in some places. We're trying to get some variable height in there so it's not this giant, large, shadowed courtyard. The park too is southern exposed, so it will stay warmer in the season, and those buildings actually serve to buffer winds from in the winter. So the courtyard should be a more inviting park setting in the winter as opposed to being just out in the middle and it'd be freezing. It'll be cold though sometimes.
Wisconsin.
Any more questions here? I can see, Dennis, your point, so the people, if they have single-family home, they can leave that too. I mean, they all work for businesses as well. But it is, there are a lot more apartments coming than the single-family homes because the land is limited here now. It's also very expensive. That's probably part of it.
And
So all we really have is the community of Bishop development. I don't know if we
That's
have
true.
too much land for single-family homes, right?
there's also a lot more.
Apartment buildings and stuff, there are,
Pardon me?
apartment buildings are everywhere, not just in Middleton. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
certainly is something beyond us, yeah.
Our
Yeah.
vacancy rate still in the first quarter of this year was right around 1%.
Which isn't a healthy rental market at all.
Yeah, there's question of, the cost, so.
Gertie? I was just going to offer an observation to what Dennis got me thinking about, comparing the 70s, early 80s with today. Back then, we were a bedroom community to Madison.
Yeah.
And now we have far, far more jobs than we did back then. So it's quite a different context. And then secondly, we have millennials as well as baby boomers that are wanting to have a higher density or are willing to embrace a higher density, smaller footprint living. So I think those are two trends that are different from the 70s that I agree that we have a lot of apartments going up and we should keep an eye on it, but it seems to be sustainable because of those trends.
Well, another thing is the City of Middleton still exports about 9,000 jobs to the region. So our population still swells by 9,000 people during the day. And a lot of that is because people who work in Middleton can't find housing.
Right.
Right. So they're commuting from other areas. And some of it is just choice of where people want to live. We're never going to get 100% of people who work in Middleton to live in Middleton, but there is still a strong demand for multifamily housing in Middleton. We learned a lot about that at the Dane County Housing Summit last week, and Professor Paulson, updated or is in the process of updating the Dane County Housing Needs Assessment, so we're keeping an eye on that. to look at, the housing demand, especially for affordable housing in Middleton and other areas.
Yeah, so Middleton's vacancy rate is about 1% for multifamily, and the service area for MG&E, the urban area of Madison, is about 2.43%, and you look for a healthy rental market of somewhere between 5 and 7%. And so some people say the rental market's getting a little soft but if you can get 1,600 for a 2-bedroom, I'd like to see a little softness in the market so that, no offense, but I'd like to see
I
come
get
down
it. Yeah, right.
to, 11 or 12.
It is getting a little soft downtown. Downtown rates have adjusted slightly, but you're talking about a $3,200 3-bedroom apartment in downtown.
Wow.
So we're way below
it's
what
not
that
the hub.
softening is. Yeah.
Yeah, 3,200 for a 3-bedroom downtown Madison.
The Ovation is their,
Ovation.
yeah.
Vacancy rates in Middleton have been declining for 2 years.
Yeah, yeah.
2 years ago, they were 1.6%, which was like crazy. They're like, oh, nothing's going to be ever better than that. And now I think it was 1.02% last quarter, and it's been steadily decreasing. And you talk to apartment managers in Middleton, and they say they get calls and calls and calls every day looking for housing. And if you go on Craigslist looking for housing available, Middleton has just nothing. And then you go to like Fitchburg, and there's a couple, and then east side of Madison, there's a couple, but there's just nothing available.
The other point.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say, if you want to be able to support really cool amenities in Middleton, like a public market, multifamily housing is one way to do it because, you're increasing the density in the city.
The other part is 3 bedrooms in Middleton or 2+ bedrooms don't really exist from an availability standpoint.
Right.
There is nothing. If you want to move here and have a space like that, there's very few developments that are putting them in. We embrace diversity and lots of family and youth and like an active community. Some people want just the young, no kids kind of housing, and we don't, so.
Be nice too because it helps families that want to be in the Middleton School District get into a unit that can accommodate them.
Right.
As far as retail that we're talking about, Old Center is looking to convert some of the retail with all that family. Is that what you guys were saying before?
No, the Middleton Center proposal.
The only retail that they can attract, according to the developers, is restaurants.
Yeah.
And
He was trying to charge specialty retailers in a maybe 1,600 square foot pad up to, what do you say, 25 square foot triple net? Which,
We're nowhere near that.
yeah.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
$10 triple X too on top of it, which is, that's almost downtown Madison rates. And Robin, what are your numbers?
We're at 16 to 18 plus usually 3 to 4. We never hit anyone with a full triple net because taxes would eat it all up.
Yeah.
So we help them cost share with us, but really we pay the burden of the tax on the facility.
What's that term mean?
Triple net? So usually you have to pay for common area maintenance, so shoveling, trash, your portion of your tax for your building, your water bill, and so that gets billed back to you, and it ranges every year. It depends on what the services cost and what the taxes cost. Taxes tend to eat up most of that portion, so we end up subsidizing the tax usually for our retailers.
Yeah, so the three are taxes, insurance, and common area.
Well, it looks very good, and I would just hope that the meritor would do something because that's, if that was to come, the possibility of this succeeding is very high. And, as Abby had pointed out, we have to, that is one of the concerns. So, and I don't know where the meritor is. I don't think we know for sure when they're starting, so.
we just met with them within the last few weeks.
Oh, okay.
Nothing is going to happen on that site next year. We showed them Robin's development proposal, and they were complimentary of the project.
Oh,
So
okay.
they liked the project.
So, okay, well, that's good.
When are they planning to?
Well,
If
they're
not next
still-
year.
They are still, now that they've developed a partnership with UW Health, they are sitting down in their planning process and going through all of the joint facilities and kind of starting from scratch to determine what the needs are. They think that our site, they own a lot of land, and they think that our site is probably the prime site that they're looking at, but they aren't able to give us any indication on timing for that.
Okay.
One of the things I'm hoping to take away today is, because obviously we're not at a final plan, but that what are the necessary changes to get a full approval from a plan commission standpoint on the plan. So we're kind of clear on the direction we should take. If the plan is presented with refinements is good, if we need to go back and look at the road again in particular, or if we can work with staff to refine the current plan and bring a more formal approval proposal back.
Well, I'm happy with, with working with the staff and with the refinement. So what do you guys think?
You do, since you own the southern piece of medical property, could say things like the market or swapping C and D and something like that, change, be expanded to incorporate some of that. And that would open up, to me, that would open up the...
So actually develop the corner of future medical? Yeah. And we're happy to, that does actually open the site up a little bit more, but we wanted to be respectful of the plan that was here. If retail moved to that side, it would open up the site more, and we would use that space.
I just think it'd be more inviting. A lot of those concerns I expressed about it being visible to the public as a public space, I think it's just, personally, I think it would just open it up. This seems to me, it's a cocoon.
We keep opening, we've been trying to open it more and more, yeah.
I would absolutely love to push that market to the corner so that the market can engage that corner and really kind of draw more people in, and also open
they're talking about switching it, C and D, so the market would move back where it was.
Sliding building C west. You're talking about the corner of Laura and Lisa?
Right,
No.
so.
I thought you guys were talking about pushing C out this.
No, they'd flip-flop C and D.
Orthopedic, it's a compromise. When I was in school, put in a special request to get one.
So put the market on the side where it's
Exponentially better than anything else. It gave me a huge performance advantage. It still does.
Because it would have a future medical option.
Orthopedic sleep is power.
Right now at Slumberland, power up and save up to $600 on select Tempur-Pedic.
Mark's being paid by Slumberland.
Can put that to bed.
So, I mean, either way, we could totally do that to accommodate opening up, this courtyard and this corridor more. Whether it's move C out here, move D over here, and move C over here.
Yeah, I mean, there's 6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Right.
But whatever you think that would attract, I guess, a corner like Lisa and Laura would be pretty friendly to the market.
Mm-hmm, it would, but yeah, we've been trying to kind of, that's one of the reasons we came today, is we really wanted to hear where plan wanted us to go, instead of just keep redoing and redoing site plans.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think the reason for the medical office being right along Laura in the concept plan is that it's very co-located with Meritor.
Right.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't object to putting the medical office somewhere on the parcel. I don't know what Meritor thinks if it's important for them that the medical office be across the street so it's conceptually the same thing
A
for
district.
people coming.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They could just put a couple stories higher, huh? On the other side.
That's the worst side of the soil, by the way.
You know?
It's really bad over there.
We have 10-story
I'm not trying to cause trouble, but
Yeah.
it would be interesting to see what a slightly reduced parking would look like for your site design.
I'm happy
And
to
cost
show you
structure.
a slightly reduced
But
parking,
if you're having a lot of food stalls, it'd be important to see a traffic study and a parking study of, because maybe someone comes to a retail or a restaurant, they sit down for an hour or two, that's certain parking demand. Go in for food stall, market type, in and out, a lot of turnover.
right,
I don't know if you could make it work without a lot of parking.
yeah,
Well, that's a good point.
you also have surface parking there, which is nice, which we don't have at Waypoint which causes issues.
So the structured parking would be mostly also for the apartments?
Correct, yeah. Yeah, the underground is definitely intended for so we're hoping that most of the apartment would go underground and the surface would be for the retail uses.
How about you, Leaf? Any thoughts? You want to provide us some input, or you're happy?
It's a concept.
Okay. How about you, Kathy?
I'd like to stick more with what the planning department sees for this, because if having a road going through, if there's any way to reconfigure things around.
Even if it can go to the Century? Okay, Cindy, what do you think?
I feel better about the question I had before, knowing that people are thinking of alternative uses if necessary and that sort of thing. And then I think the other suggestions about opening it up and that makes sense to me. I'm totally intrigued by the idea of doing this. I think you've done a lot of work to get ready for this presentation, so
Thank you.
But
I'd like to see it continue.
But a very unique thing, having a pond in the center, set up enclosed, and yeah, she probably has traveled to all those places and seen some of those things, and
Going again, West Coast, I'll be in Portland, Mark.
Go to Charleston, South Carolina, and their public market.
Oh, yeah? We're going Seattle, Ballard, Portland, San Francisco, Napa. They all have markets, new markets out, so.
so Dennis, you want to provide additional input, or you're happy?
Pardon me?
I'm asking Dennis if you have any more input, or you think you provided what you want.
Well, if I saw some of those changes that
Okay,
made it
okay.
more,
So let's,
more inviting.
okay.
Yeah.
I think it's a very nice plan,
Okay.
but obviously a lot of thought to it.
Thank you, thank you.
So you think you have enough input now?
I think Eric, do you feeling good? Okay, he's going us to do it, so I just direct.
Okay, so then we move on to the next item then. That the concept review request for tax incremental financing, district number 5, number 5, assistance, just a mixed-use development including Middleton Market 7622 Lisa Lane. So, Abby, you want to start, or?
Yes, so this is a request for almost $11.5 million in developer finance TIF. This is tax increment finance district number 5. There are a couple steps that we always take when we get a request for tax increment financing. One is, the first step is we take the development proposal to our city assessor, Paul Musser, to look at what he estimates the anticipated assessed value would be for the project. He's done that. He expects that, he took the estimated value from Robin and thought that it was very reasonable. He thinks that the project will generate about $14.3 million in tax increment over the life of TIF District 5, which would allow for a return of about 20% of the increment to the development, to the general benefit of the general TIF district. This is TIF 5, so it's the TIF district where we don't have as much increment as we have available in TIF 3 because it's been so successful. TIF 5 is a lot newer, and also there's a lot more redevelopment within TIF 5. So we aren't going to see, on a lot of the TIF 5 sites, we aren't going to see the high amount of increment that we have seen on projects in TIF 3. Another thing that we do is we take the TIF eligible costs as submitted to our TIF engineering consultant, and he reviews those costs compared to bid tabs that they have for other construction projects that they've worked on to see if they're in line with what he believes is reasonable. He has reviewed those. There weren't any major red flags that came out of that. He had a couple questions which we passed along to the developer, but it was pretty straightforward review. There were some costs initially that were proposed that our staff would recommend against incentivizing with TIF. One of those being the construction of the public market, and that's because we have never provided a TIF incentive for retail use. We know that we have other retailers that would be in competition with this, most likely in Middleton. And so we recommended that the developer take that out, and he's done that. Initially, the applicant was requesting about 14 million, and the project now is requesting 11.4 million. The proposed TIF eligible costs are exterior utility laterals, roof water infiltration, bioretention ponds, lead investigation, geotechnical, many things that we've incentivized with TIF before, like demolition of existing buildings, underground parking, but there's also a line item request for a green roof, which is something that our staff has always been very supportive of. Sustainability and sustainable features have been well documented in our TIF project plan, and we've never had a developer come forward and request a living planted roof, aside from the Aspen Commons project, which is at grade. So most people wouldn't know that it's a green roof. It's an at grade roof over a parking deck. So there was that, as well as the purple pipe, which is reclaiming water that would be used for irrigation of landscaping as well as vehicle washing, public artwork. That is something that we've incentivized using TIF before. A playground, and I think it would be not your typical playground, but kind of like what Robin was showing, that would be a more interactive play space, more typical of what you might see in a downtown plaza. So, we feel like the costs would return the 20% of increment to the district, which is something that we really want to see, especially in TIF 5. And the costs seem like they are all TIF eligible expenses, and the costs that are being proposed are reasonable from what we can tell, with the level of detail that we have so far to review. However, $11.4 million is still a pretty large TIF request compared to other projects that we've done in Middleton. I really don't know if we've done another TIF development that's had this much of a TIF incentive, so just wanted to point that out. And then I also put in there, for comparison purposes, the Market West Apartments project. It's a different project. It's 240 units. It doesn't have a retail component at all. They had solar on their project, and they had workforce housing. They did not have a green roof, and they did not have purple pipe. This is 20 additional units of housing and 20,000 square feet of public market, as well as 15,000. So it's a higher, intensity of development. But I just put it in there because it was the most comparable project that the city has approved recently.
Have a dog park.
They will.
Did Market West have a parking stall reduction from code? No.
But
it's all, and their TIF was mostly for underground parking.
Yes.
And this cost is comparable? Because this seems to their
I think the
underground
per
parking?
stall cost here was it 30,000 or something? Yeah.
That's about right.
So how many total parking stalls do they have compared to this one?
I would have to go back and look.
Oh, okay.
I know that Market West fully meets the city's parking requirements.
Okay.
They will have more than enough parking that they need for that development.
Mm-hmm.
But I would have to go back and look and see.
So what, like Kurt said, if we have fewer parking, that would also reduce the TIF as well. If-
So the biggest costs are soil and parking.
Soil remediation.
Absolutely,
That's-
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, it's a tough site from a soil standpoint.
And then third is the financing, 1.6 million.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. On previous developer finance TIF, have we paid for the interest?
Yes.
Yeah.
And why are we doing that when, in essence, are we paying the full market rate of that financing?
I believe so. But I would have to go back and look and compare this to other projects.
It's pretty close, yeah, on the other ones I've reviewed. I don't know what they got as an interest rate, but this is based on working with State Bank of Cross Plains at a 5.25% interest rate.
5.25%?
Yep.
For a construction loan?
It's actually a
It's the
TIF
program.
loan, yeah, so what it uses, it doesn't actually go against the building, it uses a personal guarantee and then the tax revenue that's guaranteed from the city as its guarantors.
The other thing.
Because
Sorry, go ahead.
sorry.
I wasn't clear, is it 1 story underground or?
It is 1 story of underground.
2 is impossible?
1's hard. 2's very, very, very hard. Nothing's impossible in building. You just throw more money at it. But I think from a realistic standpoint of what's viable in that site.
Kind of stretching it.
Yeah. And we actually played a lot around with putting some underground and then a parking deck on the first floor and then going up from there. The problem, we actually are constrained on height through the HUD financing, actually, of all things. We're constrained on height from the airport, and we're also constrained on height from HUD.
Which HUD funding are
So
you
we're using a 22D, 221D.
221D3.
Yes. And when you get above 4 stories, you are a commercial building and your rates change. And for instance, cabinet makers rate in a residential building is $25 an hour. Cabinet hangers rates in a commercial building are $56 an hour. So your labor rates skyrocket in Davis-Bacon on the HUD. So that's one of our other constraints and why we didn't bring covered surface parking underneath the building.
But these elevated loft areas will not take you up?
Right, because it's still on the 4th floor.
Okay.
Right. We did check in that right away.
Access, or just access from within the unit itself. It's not
Just so people know, the 221 program at HUD is the development loan, and it does not require any affordability.
Correct.
Because
yes.
it's just an FHA insurance on a multifamily product.
Correct.
Any more questions?
Just for consideration, when you think about how a developer finance TIF works, we are in essence loaning to the developer the good faith and credit of the city, right? And they're being paid back by the increment, which is a pretty low risk loan. So in essence, that is already reducing the risk to the lender.
Mm-hmm.
And in future, when we look at making the interest a TIF eligible expense, we should account for the fact that they're probably paying less than market rate on a loan that's backed by TIF.
You'd think banks were like that, but often they aren't, unfortunately. TIF loans are really hard to get. We're lucky that State Blank has worked really closely with you guys and is a good partner to Middleton. But yeah, there's not a lot of people lining up to do my TIF loan, unfortunately.
Yeah, if you're getting 5.25% on a commercial development project,
that's not what I'm paying on the rest of it, but yeah.
It's a pretty good loan.
I know.
Yeah.
So how does it compare to the project which you have done in Monona? How big is your project which you did in Monona?
Monona was a $20 million project, and we had about a $2 million TIF ask there. They have different TIF requirements than you guys do. Mm-hmm. One of the reasons we came here, as opposed to really pursuing that market project in Middleton, is because you do have more generous TIF. You allow the TIF developer to use more of the increment within the city. I mean, it's a reason I came here versus other markets that we looked at.
And they don't do developer finance.
They do not. They pull a bond out of the city, and that also limits how much that they can do in the increment because they have caps on those bonds. And they pull a pure city revenue bond, which affects their lending power and borrowing power as a city.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions for Robin? Any more questions for Robin? Do you have any questions, Robin, or you got?
So I have a question on where the TIF lies. Then do you have feedback and you want us to readjust? Are you approving it? I guess that's my question.
Well, we are not approving anything.
Well,
right now.
recommending, I should say.
No, it's mainly for discussion today. So I think we have provided you input, and maybe when you reduce the parking, see where the TIF goes and work with the staff. So it's mainly today is for discussion. So,
I mean, just as you know, it will raise a lot of eyebrows at City Council because it's a big chunk of change. But it's good to know the costs seem in line with.
Yeah. I agree. It makes me nervous to have it this high, but like you just reminded us, TIF 5 is different than TIF 3. And I'll be interested in,
We need to increment in TIP 5.
yeah.
It is a lot of money, so.
I mean, I
as
think you
said.
guys are on the right path to trying to make sure everything is appropriate. If you still think it's a good project, given that, then deal with the fact that it's a lot of money.
Well, we have to make sure the project succeeds, so that is what the city is looking into too, so.
Thank you. Thank you all for all your time tonight. I will be back soon with more refined plans for you.
Well, we need a motion to adjourn. All right, so we are adjourned. Thank you.
For your, I always forget to bring mine.